If your self-worth depends on success, you don't have self-respect yet. We're taught this quietly from the beginning, that value has to be proven, that success means you're worthy, and failure means you're something less. So we learn to hang our self-worth on outcomes, on results we can't fully control, on wins that expire the moment someone else does better. And every time we fail, something deeper than confidence breaks. It's not just disappointment, it's a loss of self-respect. Kant saw this as a trap. He believed real self-respect is not something you earn through success. It's something you practice, regardless of how things turn out. And to understand why, we need to separate two things we confuse every day. Quote, self-worth asks, what did I achieve? Self-respect asks, how did I act? Modern self-worth is a scoreboard. It measures value by outcomes, by titles, money, approval, comparisons. You feel worthy when you win, and smaller when you don't. That's the problem. Because self-worth, as we're taught today, is always unstable. It depends on results you can lose overnight, and on standards that keep moving the moment you reach them. Kant rejected this entirely. For Kant, self-respect doesn't come from outcomes, it comes from principles. It doesn't ask whether you succeeded, it asks whether you acted in a way you could stand behind, even if no one applauded, even if things went wrong. This kind of respect doesn't need validation. It doesn't inflate when you win, and it doesn't collapse when you fail. Because human value, in Kant's view, is not something measurable. It doesn't increase with success, and it doesn't decrease with defeat. Here's the line most people miss. If your dignity rises and falls with outcomes, it was never dignity. And modern life? It's designed to blur this distinction on purpose. We don't chase success for happiness. We chase it to feel legitimate. Look closely at modern life. Hustle culture doesn't just reward effort, it moralizes productivity. Being busy feels virtuous, rest feels suspicious, and slowing down feels like falling behind, ethically, not just economically. Productivity shame is everywhere. If you're not progressing, you feel guilty. If you're not optimizing, you feel irresponsible. And comparison never turns off. Someone is always ahead. Someone is always doing more with less. Here's the hidden mechanism underneath all of it. Success becomes a license to exist. Achievement means you're justified. Failure means you need to explain yourself. You don't just feel disappointed when you fall short. You feel exposed, as if you've failed a moral test. Kant would say something unsettling here. When your value depends on outcomes, you turn yourself into a means. You treat your own life as a tool for status, for approval, for results that were never fully under your control. And once success defines your worth, failure stops being a setback. It becomes a verdict. When success defines your worth, failure becomes a moral judgment. And this is where the damage becomes impossible to ignore. Quote, failure feels personal, but Kant says it isn't. When we fail, it rarely feels neutral. It feels exposure, as if the result revealed something shameful about who we are, not just what we did. This is the most common mistake we make. We collapse action into identity. A project fails. I am a failure. A goal collapses. My value collapses with it. Kant draws a hard line here. He separates what happens from who you are. Outcomes belong to the world, chance, limits, timing, other people. Dignity belongs to something else entirely. According to Kant, you can fail and still act with honesty, restraint, and respect. You can lose and still refuse to lie, exploit, or betray your principles. And the opposite is also true. You can succeed and still hollow yourself out, win by cheating, advance by using others, climb by denying your own moral limits. Kant's claim is uncomfortable but clear. Failure does not touch dignity, only your choices do. That's why failure is not a verdict on your worth. It's a test of character, not a measure of value, but a moment that reveals whether your principles hold when outcomes don't. Dignity is not what survives success, it's what survives failure. And that leads to the real question. If dignity doesn't come from winning, where does it actually come from? Kant ties dignity to one thing only: moral agency. For Kant, dignity does not come from talent, not from intelligence, not from success. It comes from something far quieter: your capacity to choose principles and live by them. You are not valuable because you achieve. You are valuable because you can decide how to act, even when it costs you. This is what Kant means by moral agency. You have reason. You can step back from impulse. You can ask, what should I do, not what benefits me most, and then you can act accordingly.
That's the entire foundation. Notice what doesn't matter here. Not outcomes, not praise, not approval, not whether it worked. Those belong to the external world, which you never fully control. What matters is narrower and harder. Did you betray your own principles? Did you treat another person as a tool or as an end? Did you trade integrity for convenience? Because the moment you do that, you don't just lose something externally, you undercut self-respect. Kant's idea is demanding because it removes guarantees. Act rightly, even if it costs you, even if you fail, even if no one notices. That's why self-respect isn't confidence, it's courage. Self-respect is the courage to act rightly without guarantees. But this idea collapses the moment we start measuring ourselves against others, and that's where modern life quietly destroys it. Comparison turns dignity into a scoreboard. The moment you compare yourself, you move dignity out of your hands and into a system you don't control. Modern life is built on comparison. Social media numbers, productivity metrics, status ladders, invisible rankings you never agreed to join. And here's Kant's warning translated into modern terms. The moment your value depends on external measurement, you are no longer self-governing. Comparison replaces moral agency with performance. Instead of asking, "Did I act according to principle?" you start asking, "Did I do better than them?" That shift is subtle but destructive, because now your dignity rises when others fall. Your self-respect fluctuates with algorithms. Your sense of worth depends on standards that change daily. From a Kantian view, this is not motivation, it's surrender. You've handed over the authority to judge your life to metrics designed for visibility, not integrity. That's why people who constantly compare themselves often feel empty even when they win, because winning a ranking is not the same as respecting yourself. Self-respect doesn't need proof. It doesn't require applause. It doesn't ask permission. It requires consistency. Doing the right thing again, even when it doesn't improve your position, especially when no one is watching. The more you compare, the less you can respect yourself. So if self-respect can't be measured and can't be ranked, how do you practice it every day? Kant didn't give affirmations, he gave discipline. Kant never asked you to feel better about yourself. He asked you to act in a way that deserves respect, even when it costs you. That's why self-respect, in Kant's sense, is not discovered through reflection alone. It's built through practice. Here is a simple but uncomfortable exercise, the Kantian self-respect audit. Before you act, especially when the pressure is high, pause and ask the first question. Am I doing this for principle or for approval? Not, will this succeed? Not, will this be rewarded? Not, will this look good? But, does this align with the rule I claim to live by? Then comes the second test, the private one. Would I still do this if no one ever knew? No audience, no credit, no validation. If the action collapses without witnesses, it was never about self-respect. And then Kant's most demanding filter, the universality test. Would it be acceptable if everyone acted this way? Not just today, not just when it benefits you, but as a rule others could follow without contradiction. This question is ruthless. It strips away excuses. It exposes shortcuts. And here's the key shift Kant demands. Move your focus from outcomes to conduct, from winning and losing to consistency. Because outcomes are unstable. They depend on luck, timing, and other people. But conduct is yours. Every time you choose principle over approval, you strengthen something invisible but durable. You don't feel it immediately. There's no dopamine spike, no external confirmation. But over time, something changes. You begin to trust yourself. And that trust is the quiet foundation of self-respect. Self-respect grows silently through repetition, which leads us to Kant's hardest truth, the one most people avoid. Kant didn't promise confidence, he promised integrity. Kant never said this path would make you feel powerful, or admired, or safe from failure. What he offered was something quieter and stronger, a way to stand by your own actions even when outcomes collapse, even when applause disappears, even when success walks away. Because success can raise your status, it can buy comfort, it can impress others, but only dignity lets you live with yourself. When your value depends on results, every setback feels like a verdict. But when your value rests on principle, failure becomes information, not a sentence. That is Kant's secret. Self-respect is not a mood. It's not confidence. It's not positive thinking. It's the calm that comes from knowing, I acted in a way I could defend, even if it didn't work. And that calm doesn't disappear when the world stops rewarding you. So if you want philosophy that builds self-respect, not ego, that teaches you how to stand without external validation and how to live with yourself when success disappears, subscribe, because when outcomes vanish, principles are all that remain.